Dead by Daylight, or as I call it, the most miserable game since League of Legends. DBD is one of the most successful asymmetrical multiplayer games to ever exist. It's been running for almost a decade, it has tons of licensed characters, it still pulls in tens of thousands of concurrent players daily. I mean, me personally, I've been playing it for at least 5 years on and off, from Xbox,
gaming,
PC, and now PS5. So when people hear the phrase, Dead by Daylight is dying, the response is something like, no it isn't, look at the player numbers. Or they think it's just some clickbait YouTuber who needs views, which might be a bit true, to be honest. But yeah, on paper, the game is doing fine. I mean, they're pumping out collabs like it's Fortnite. We've got Resident Evil,
women,
Five Nights at Freddy's, Silent Hill, Stranger Things now.
I play Dead by Daylight.
Chuckle now, we make some scream. It's Bendy and the devil's swing.
So don't get me wrong, Dead by Daylight isn't collapsing overnight, but there are issues with the game that make me worry. Issues like a lack of competition, an unsustainable content machine, and a game that was never built with this future in mind. So let's talk about it. Dead by Daylight has no real competition. Absolutely dominates its genre right now. And that's not actually a good thing. Asymmetrical horror is quite niche because Dead by Daylight is really the only game to succeed at it. Every competitor that's tried to challenge it has failed. Friday the 13th died due to lawsuits. Video Horror Society, or VHS, which I hadn't even heard of before this video, collapsed before it ever found an audience. Evil Dead, that fell off a cliff before it ever came out. Texas Chainsaw started off well and then just ghosted us. And because none of these games stuck, behavior has never had to evolve. You can complain about tunneling, camping, slugging, broken perks, awful maps, and the response is basically, okay, well, see you tomorrow. Competition, especially in gaming, is so important because it forces things like innovation and forces studios to actually listen to players. Because if they don't, players will just leave. I mean, take a look at Battlefield and Call of Duty last year. Call of Duty didn't innovate. It kept everything the same with that circus of a campaign, while Battlefield promised change and grittiness, which is what people wanted. And Battlefield ended up outselling Call of Duty completely. Dead by Daylight doesn't have this pressure. If you like asymmetrical horror, DBD is really your only option. This monopoly that they have creates a lot of complacency, I feel. As I said before, when players complain about bugs, the response is slow. Look at the Walking Dead update last year. That thing was a mess, and I'll definitely get to that in a minute. We have killers that will feel miserable to play, and that can take years to address. Perks are either overpowered or just useless, and they're left that way for entire chapters at a time. And now Behavior Interactive is sitting here like, yeah, where are you going to go? Because you can't go anywhere. You can't find a new game because there's nothing that can compete with it. DBD isn't improving because it's competing. It's improving because it has to. Only just enough to keep people playing and keep people spending. And it works.
This just works.
My best example of this was when Ots, the biggest DBD streamer,
why do you have a penis?
was just ignored live on stream by the devs. So for those who don't know, Ots and a few other streamers, as well as Chandler Riggs, who plays Carl on The Walking Dead, all got together for a stream hosted by Behavior. They were meant to just play custom games together and chill. Sounds easy, until you realize this is Dead by Daylight we're talking about. So of course they had DDoS attacks and just couldn't play. But not to worry, because Ots knew a fix. All they had to do was have his moderators just sit in the spectator slots.
To restart this lobby, and we're gonna ask behavior employees to fill the thing. If they cannot fill it, I maybe invite some friends or something in extremis, like just in case, okay?
All right.
If we can fill the lobby, this should not happen. We're gonna need, I believe, 3 spectators. I believe it's.
And it would go away. But Behavior dismissed this, and the stream continued for not much longer because nobody could play.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
And this was just a complete embarrassment for DBD and Behavior as a whole.
From you, Chandler, so you need to get the streaming. You need to get the streaming. We need to see more of you.
DVD streams.
Because it was such a simple fix, but they just ignored it for some reason and just kept giving these awful excuses as to why. This is how you get a game that feels perpetually behind itself, The community is telling them what's wrong, and it just either doesn't get fixed or takes way too long to get fixed. And I feel like DBD is always just reacting. It never leads in terms of patches and fixes, at least. And while they have this complacency and don't need to worry about competition, it's just going to stay like this. And it's really concerning to see. But moving on.
Help! Help me!
As we know, Dead by Daylight's biggest selling point is its constant content. New killers, new survivors, perks, maps, reworks, events, cosmetics. Every few months, like clockwork, but part of you dreads every new update. On the surface, it sounds great. More content should mean a healthier game, right? But not when the foundation of this game is terrible and the game is being run on Unreal Engine, of all things, which is just never a good sign. That engine is just disgustingly bad. Dead by Daylight wasn't built to support this kind of endless expansion. Each new killer introduces mechanics that interact with dozens of perks, add-ons, maps, items. Every new perk also needs to justify its existence alongside hundreds of others.
Oh my god.
But in reality, it's only a small minority that are being used instead of a large, diverse majority. Every new update breaks something. Bugs resurface that were fixed years ago. That Walking Dead update is the prime example of this. We had a steel beam in the loading screen for weeks from the PTB to launch. And if you were playing as killer during this update, well, God help you. That new item they added, the fog vial, just took away your audio permanently, meaning you lost by default pretty much. We also had an exploit with one of Nia's perks, I think, where you could just infinitely use a toolbox or any item really. So killer was just miserable to play during this update. We also have killers that just launch unusably weak or hilariously broken. Poor Houndmaster still isn't fully fixed, and she's been in the game since 2024. It is absolutely disgusting that they allow her and probably other killers to just sit broken like this. We also have perks that will just dominate the meta for months, while other perks or even new perks just fall into that kind of pile of mid. Maps are usually upgraded but still play horribly, or they just add a million pallets and call it a fix. Instead of slowing down and refining what already exists, behavior just keeps piling on more systems, and it's just creating this bloat around the game. And worse, it trains players to expect novelty instead of quality. That's not sustainable. It's going to lead to burnout, and probably did if you look at last year for both the developers and the community. We went without an update for months until Stranger Things came out this year. They delayed everything to fix the game, which I'll let you guys decide if that's working or not. But this lack of content highlights an issue for me. The game felt so empty and boring for me personally, and probably for content creators too, because there was just nothing new to talk about. And without this constant flow of the new stuff, DBD becomes a bit stagnant and a bit bland. And the worst part, for me at least, is that all the content is just abandoned. Early killers feel so outdated now. All the perks exist purely as filler. Entire mechanics like keys and moris go through endless identity crisis because they were just never designed with this long-term vision. And that's where my next point comes in. Dead by Daylight was never planned for the long term. This is the core issue behind everything else for me. DBD was just never meant to last this long. When it launched way back in 2016, it was a janky indie horror game with spaghetti code and a simple concept. Run, hide, hook, repeat. Bare bones progression, limited killers, and no real roadmap for the future. And yet, it exploded. And instead of rebuilding the game from the ground up once they realized what they had, behavior chose to build on top of it. Systems were layered instead of redesigned. Core mechanics were patched instead of rethought. This building on top, more and more, only really got worse when they changed over to Unreal Engine 5. I think they did this because they wanted the game to look more modern, but Unreal Engine 5 has only really brought more bugs and more stability, especially for me. The game just feels slower in terms of performance. My PC ran this game really well, actually, for what it was. But since they changed to Unreal Engine 5, I've had so many lag spikes and freezes.
Michael, don't leave me here!
Furthermore, the game just feels like it's constantly fighting itself. The MMR system feels forgotten. The perk system is quite overloaded. Killers are balanced around assumptions like Springtrap. He was fine in the PTB. A few bugs needed ironing out, and when he came to launch, he was fine. But because he was a new killer and survivors hadn't learned how to play against him, he was called broken, overpowered, and that led to nerfs, and now he just feels a bit meh. Now he doesn't feel as good. And I feel like that's such a big issue that killers are facing now. If they're not S tier or even A tier, they just feel so weak to play in comparison. And you have to absolutely sweat your balls off just to get 2 or 3 kills. And you also have to understand the killer completely, otherwise you're just going to get bullied to death. Every major rework feels like a desperate attempt to modernize a structure that was just never meant to hold this much weight. Michael Myers became a fucking dash killer, and he's shooting around the map like he's got coke in his veins. I mean, no wonder they lost the license for him, to be honest. Even behavior's design philosophy changes for this game. Sometimes they want faster games, slower games, more casual, more competitive. The game lurches from one direction to another, never committing to any of them. The old rank system has just been hollowed out, and it's gone now. We used to have grey ranks, which meant you were a really low skill player, and red ranks, which were for the best. But now that means nothing. It just decides if you get more or less blood points when rank resets, rank in air quotes. The game doesn't really incentivize you to play well, although people play like it does. That lack of planning is why every fix, I think, just creates 3 new problems. DBD isn't broken because of one bad decision. It's broken because it was never designed with this end game in mind, just the next chapter. So, oh my god. So, is Dead by Daylight dying? No, not in the literal sense. The servers aren't shutting down, the licenses aren't stopping, the play count isn't collapsing or anything, but DBD is, I think, in a decline, or a subtle one at least. For me, it's declining in trust, confidence, and their vision. Long-time players feel exhausted. I came back in early 2025 for Springtrap, and I loved the game again. I was watching videos about the game, playing every night, but then we got that Walking Dead update, man. And it was terrible. It blew the game apart. And I got bored again and sick of the game, so I quit. I was so bored of playing a buggy game. And yeah, it's definitely a skill issue, but my lobbies felt terrible to play in. Killers were either awful at the game or insane. There was no in-between. And when I went up against survivors as killer, I either got clowns and bots or a fully stacked survivor friends who were about to send me to Pound Town for 10 minutes. New players feel overwhelmed. I introduced a friend to the game and they just couldn't get into it. Not their fault at all. The tutorial teaches you nothing, and it's impossible without videos to learn the game. And the skill gap I'm mentioning seems to be getting wider and wider, really slowly but steadily. DBD survives not because it's healthy, but because there's nothing else like it. And that's honestly the real tragedy of it. If a serious competitor ever appears, one that learns from DBD's mistakes, prioritizes the long term, and gets licenses like DBD, Dead by Daylight won't be ready and will probably fall apart. So that's it. DBD is probably in a bit of a decline or has these concerning signs because they never planned ahead. They never thought they'd get here. So DBD is a fascinating game that succeeded beyond anyone's expectations and is now somewhat hampered by said success. It's not dying, but it's not in a good place. I love DBD and I always will, but I just can't defend this game in some of its states. I still cherish the fun I had with it, custom games with friends, looping killers, and killing a full team of survivor friends. But unless behavior changes how they think about the future and not just looking one chapter ahead, this decline is only going to get more obvious and worse. So thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Obviously, I'd love to hear that. Do you think DBD can recover? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Is the game too far gone? Or am I just over-exaggerating a little bit? But for now, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.